They say good design is obvious, but great design is transparent. We're pursuing perfect hotel design wherever we can find it. That means speaking to the brightest minds in the hospitality industry. This is the Hotel Design Podcast.
Hey everyone, Glenn here. Listen, these days it's all about LVT, right? Luxury vinyl tile. It's the number one choice in guest rooms for a lot of reasons, but of course, cleanliness and good air quality, particularly now because there's such a heightened emphasis on being clean. Now, my good friends over at Porcelanosa, they've been offering link floor for a really long time now, and it's a high quality LVT solution with the most incredible sound absorption I've ever not heard, right? So you got the cleanliness aspect, you got the sound absorption aspect. Now, to prove that, I had a chance to visit the architectural lab called Intertech in York, Pennsylvania, and I witnessed it myself. Porcelanosa, they've done the research to keep a guest rooms quiet. Plus, you'll have the assurance of passing relevant building codes and creating an environment of cleanliness you know is so important. Please go to porcelanosa.com and learn more. Then click on that link floor tab or drop us a line over here, info@thehoteldesignpodcast.com. That's info@hoteldesignpodcast.com. Let them know Glenn sent you. Thanks. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Hotel Design Podcast, brought to you by our good friends over at Porcelanosa. I'm excited because it's not every day I get to speak to people that I haven't spoken to before. You can tell I've been around for a little while because of all these gray hairs over here. Today, we're going to be speaking with Simeone and Gina Deary. You know them as two of the principals from KTGY, Simeone Deary Design Group out of Chicago. So without further ado, let's bring them in. Lisa, Gina, great to see you. My first question is, why do people say without further ado? Why do we need to get into this ado thing to begin with? And why am I talking about ado when it's really a big don't? I don't know.
Glenn, that's a good question.
Thank you.
We'll check into that and get back to you on that.
I appreciate that. Forget all the design stuff. Let's get right on this particular issue. So you've been at this now for a while. I don't want to say how many years because that both is good that you've been doing it for a lot of years, but makes me sad when we think about how many years we've been doing our career at the same time. But I think the greatest place to start is, how are you feeling about the state of hotel design today in 2022?
Well, we are feeling great about the state of hotel design today. Right, Jean?
Oh, I agree.
Yeah. We're really excited, especially coming out of the last couple of years where we weren't feeling as optimistic. I think the state of things is really exciting. It's even better than we thought it was going to be, because not only have we come out of the last few years of COVID and close downs and, the nature of things in design and hotels that have been really quiet, but we've come out on the other side with a lot of positivity and a lot of change for the better, and we're really excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, things have been really changing. And one of the things that I talk about on my daily show, No Vacancy Live, is that now is the time of the great reset. It's a chance to try new things. So, Gina, how are you thinking about that when it comes to creating that next wave of amazing designs?
Well, I think what I'm seeing a lot and what is exciting for us is that for a while there we were compartmentalizing design, and now it's turning into more of designing for people that are gathering. So it's in terms of during COVID, obviously, it was about being safe and creating barriers, and we all got on different talks and we talked about how that might affect our future. And truly, we didn't know because none of us were really traveling that much. And now that it's picked back up, I'm seeing that the COVID culture really hasn't affected the way we stay in hotels as much as we thought it would, but more in terms of just everyone being a lot more joyous to be part of a group, to be part of an excitement. So now we're designing for things to just have a lot of life in it, a lot of F&B experiences, a lot of coming together and being in groups.
Yeah, joyous, that is, until you see the bill.
I would say, I have to say that is something too that's changed is, I'm sure we've all felt it, but it is a little bit more expensive to stay in hotels now than it was before.
It is. Thank goodness for our
Yeah.
owners friends out there. They could really use that after all that we've suffered through.
That's
But
right.
you know, quite frankly, I personally never thought a lot of things were going to change. I felt like measures in the lobby, for example, were all put in place temporarily. And it really frustrated me that people are out there saying things are inexorably changing. They're never going to go back to the way that they are, completely ignoring 100,000 plus
Right.
years of human development and stuff.
That's right.
Couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you. I really like that people agree with me.
Yes.
So, so now that that's over and you can really start to focus on the future, it's giving you opportunity now, like we said, to try new things, particularly when it comes to the food and beverage arena. I've always been a big believer that even with technology, gathering around for drinks, for a meal is the future. It's the past, it's the present, it's just the way that we do things. So how are you framing the way that you want to go ahead and create great experiences where people will spend even more of that cash?
I think a lot of it, Glenn, has to do with incorporating food and beverage into spaces that maybe they weren't incorporated into before. And like Gina said, melding, you know, the lobby space with food and bev. We opened a hotel in DC just at the height of COVID, not the best situation, but it's really booming now because you know, it was a central bar feature, and the entire lobby is the restaurant. It's a lobby lounge. It's a lot. You can eat everywhere. You can drink everywhere, and we're seeing this bleeding and spreading out of food and beverage and lounge and even retail components and experiential components. And I think that's the way you're going to start to see things happen more and more, that people just don't want to, you know, go over here to check in, to go to a restaurant.
Right.
They want to be able to say, I'm closing my laptop here and I want to order something now. You know, I think that's what's going to continue to happen.
Right. And it's interesting to see how the genesis of this all really started. And that was the whole notion of let's hang out in the lobby. Let's either do stuff as a group or be alone together. And now you're kind of seeing incorporating all these different elements into it. So, Gina, when you're thinking about creating a space that has all of that great flow, that's really matching the needs of the guest in 2022 and beyond, how are you thinking about creating all these little different areas, but indicating to everyone it's really one area at the end of the day?
Well, there's a couple ways that we do that. Interestingly enough, I'm getting challenged quite a bit with people presenting us with spaces that are very large in terms of whether it's a repurposed building or they're doing a restaurant in a 2-story space. And that's a little unique because a couple of years ago it was finding smaller, intimate spaces. So how we kind of navigate that is through really good planning and making sure that we have kind of these elements of activation everywhere you look. So bringing some ceiling heights down or creating like these really comfortable, maybe encompassing pods, and that would be for the more intimate areas. And those might sit within a larger space, but the interior architecture or design is what kind of forms those pods. Those are your private pods. And then obviously everything starts with form follows function, making sure that our plan kind of has its own story. So before we even design anything, we have a plan that kind of designates, okay, this is the area that will have community. This is the area we'll have, you know, you have a private place to sit with one other person. This is going to be this really great lively bar area, and this is going to support that bar area. So once you have that all figured out, kind of design appropriately for all those areas. And then all work as one.
Yeah, I'm really curious as to when you see all that blank space, right? And you know you have to fill it with great ideas. How does that process work for the two of you? You've been partners since 2002-ish or something like that. Woo! So, you know, we're getting on 20th anniversary for you two together. So it must be interesting that you, at this point, you probably have a real shorthand. You kind of like understand each other in in an implicit way that I would never be able to understand the two of you. So what is that like when you're creating something from scratch? Where do you get inspiration from? How much do the people paying the bills influence you, and how does all of that work?
Wow, that's a big question.
Yeah.
I know, and you've got 30 seconds to answer. Go.
Well, I could just start by saying that Lisa and I usually work independently of each other. We always have, but we bounce a lot of ideas off each other.
Right.
So we probably approach design quite differently in terms of how we might begin. But in the end, our spaces very much have the same feeling of layering and, very purposeful. So that's how we work together. We kind of inspire each other and also compete with each other. We'll walk by each other's desk and be like, oh, that's really good.
Yeah.
You're kind of like almost joking with each other, but there's a lot of truth. Right? Because it's like good natured. You want to keep topping what you're doing.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And if you depend on yourself, you're not always going to have that person to give you that kick that you need.
That's right.
I always have someone to aspire to. So Lisa says it great. Like, I kind of love your design, and that's usually what happens between us, which is great. It keeps us going and lots of ideas.
Yeah.
But Glenn, to one of your other questions, we get our inspiration from our concept, and our process always starts with a narrative, and we do a ton of research when we start our projects with our, and we always have to be authentic with our concept research, and it starts from something real within the project. We do a lot of storytelling at the beginning.
The client has a lot to do with it too. You've approached on that. I think as more and more experienced we get in this industry, we find that it's very important to hear what your client's saying, to understand what maybe their dreams are or what their vision is, because that's why they're hiring us experts to get them to their vision. And we've always had the same kind of goal, like, let's get them to their vision and beyond. So the only way to do that is to hear from them what their goals are and what their dreams are for a property.
And then the end result has to be, the guest experience, and then the guests loving it so much that they make the project successful. So weaving into our design those incredible guest experiences. So it's not always just about the sticks and stones of design, bringing in those experiential components that make it to Instagram and then get all of those likes and get more clients for the guests is the added component that we bring to the table, because we have an internal branding department that, we're constantly bringing in those branded experiential pieces within the components of the narrative.
All right, so let me ask you this question then, Lisa. When it comes to creating those Instagrammable moments, how different is that from what you were already doing anyway before the advent of Instagram and Facebook and all of this social media thing? Because everyone says you got to have these social media, these moments, these social media moments, but you had to have moments anyway prior to it. Has your thinking changed?
And first of all, can I say that we hate the words Instagrammable moments? We do.
Let me give you a round of applause on that one.
We can't. Because it feels so contrived, and it feels like the place where everybody stands there and takes the pictures. We really strive to have something real and authentic and integrated into the architecture or integrated into the design that feels like something someone wants to experience and take a picture of by virtue of the fact that it's beautiful and it means something. It has real thoughtful purpose to the design and to the property uniquely, not because it's angel wings on a wall.
If you design, if you're a good designer and you approach the project correctly, those Instagrammable moments will happen naturally, and they do.
Right.
So honestly, I cringe personally if I hear the word Insta or Instagram. It's cringy.
Yeah.
Right, because what you're really saying is that if it's not organic, it could quickly go into gimmicky, which really is counterintuitive to what you're trying to achieve, even if you get some likes.
Exactly, because it's not timeless. And then what are we doing for our client? it's going to go away in three years.
Right. So what are you doing for the clients? Let's take a look. Boom. Bring up an example of your work. Now, please try to use as many word pictures as possible, because as everybody knows who's listening to this, if you're listening to this, the audio version, you'll be able to get a copy of these great pictures wherever you downloaded the show in the show notes. But ladies, what property are we looking at right now, and what strikes you as important to discuss here?
So this is the Marriott in Austin, Texas. And what we love about this project is, although it is a Marriott branded project, you know, this feels, it has a beautiful, clean, modern, classic design. It doesn't feel branded. It doesn't feel, it's got that timelessness that we were talking about, Glenn. It's got hints of, you know, the Austin landscape, but it doesn't feel trendy or screaming Austin. You know, those pieces behind the front desk are
this doesn't scream Austin at all to me. Otherwise, I'd expect to see guitars and like ribs hanging from the ceiling or something like that.
Right. If you were there in person, you would see that it's a beautiful polished concrete floor, and the wood is that's those overarching pieces that run down the center there are just a gorgeous, beautiful wood finish. And the pieces behind, the art pieces behind the front desk are individual pieces of wood done by a local artist and hand painted. You know, there's lots of little details, but it's just all in all, it's a convention hotel. So, you know, it has to be big and carry a lot of people, but it doesn't feel like your typical convention hotel.
It does not, but simultaneously, it is big. But I think what you've done, and I don't have the design dialogue that you pros have, but the big wooden arches that you have, it seems to me to delineate different spaces to kind of break it down to a more human size. Is that an appropriate observation?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We wanted to kind of come back and say, you know, how do we bring a little bit more wood into the space? How do we, you know, bring some softness, some curve into this big square box, if you will? Just beyond that second column is the bar space. Just like you said, it delineates the lobby check-in from the bar area, from the restaurant, which is just beyond that. So you're right. It does kind of delineate those spaces.
Excellent. My two favorite words in the English language. You're right. I like that. So that's fantastic. Let's move on to this property here. I love this lobby. What property is this?
This is the Kansas City property within Kansas City. It was once a men's club, the Kansas City Club, and it was by the brand Hyatt Unbound. Okay, sorry. When we first started this project, the brand was Two Roads, and during the process, it became the Unbound series. So this brand.
And for just let me throw that out there: the Hyatt Unbound series is the collection brand, so it doesn't have to be with a specific brand, which gives you folks in design a lot more leeway because you don't have to fit rigid standards.
Right, and really, the Unbound kind of thought process is awesome because it's like let you experience the space like you should and come to it naturally. So it is a Gothic. If you were to be seeing the picture, you would see that it's an amazing old Gothic structure. It was an all men's club at one point. So it's filled with just these beautiful details. The architecture is amazing. So, you know, right off the bat, we felt extremely privileged and very also inspired. But the goal was to make it inclusive because there's nothing less inclusive than a men's club from the turn of the century. So,
unless you're talking about a bunch of white guys hanging out.
Emphasis on white and guys. There was one woman, Bertha, who tried to join like 5 times and just didn't work out. So our goal really, I mean, after a lot of research and whatnot, was just to think of this space as a very masculine space that just is like beautiful woman walks in this strong, confident, and this amazing, you know, dress and kind of just wows the space. And that's the way we thought of it throughout the process. So when you look at all these Gothic details, we didn't ignore them. We actually accentuated them and really brought your eye, if we can, at any time to these. You don't see this type of craftsmanship anymore. And we want to make sure that when we are doing a repurposed building like this, that you see this craftsmanship as timeless and not dated. So all of the details are reminiscent of that. And, you know, the whole palette is these beautiful pinks and blues. And,
Right.
you know, we use I started with a palette that was really what existed. So the marble floor, you know, the wood color, and we went from there so we could bring it back to life. And use the space the way it was originally intended, but for a new audience.
Right. It looks it looks really beautiful, the space, and I love adaptive reuse. For me as a customer, I think it adds a lot more character. So what are the secrets that you reveal in the process of turning an existing building into something modern and approachable that kind of harkens back to what it was, but doesn't create too much confusion about where you want it to be?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you just hit on like one of my favorite reasons for being in design, and that's these repurposed buildings. And it's because,
Right.
you know, when you're in them, you always feel the history of these buildings, no matter what they were. And so you
Right.
can't ignore that. Like, that's a big part of where you start is what was it before and what's it going to be now. And it's a joy, and it's just such a challenge to look at that because, you know, whether we've done, you know, a repurposed fire station or a repurposed candy factory, the first place to start is like, how do you bring that past in as a design element and not as the concept of the building? So, you know, like you saw in the Kansas City, it was how do we bring those kind of that ceiling design into this huge lighting element. In the when we repurposed a fire station, it was how do we repurpose this so it's not a fire station anymore, but the fire station is kind of the art in the space. So that's where we always start.
Right. So you don't necessarily want to bury what it used to be.
No.
You just want to de-emphasize it while honoring the spirit of the building.
Yes, and that's just a personal preference for our office that we believe in the past.
Yes. I really think the past really is what connects us to the future. And one of the things that I really love about adaptive reuse projects is it gives you that connection, and it gives you a palette from which to work that connects us to the usually urban environment that I see a lot of these in. I love some of like the warehouses that have been converted and stuff like that, and some tertiary markets and stuff. So Lisa, do you find that to be creatively rewarding when you get to do an adaptive reuse building as opposed to something from the ground up?
You know what, Glenn? I like to do both kinds, but I do agree with Gina. The adaptive reuse is so rewarding because when you unearth the history that's within the building, you get these treasures sometimes that you never expected, especially in the smaller details. And then for us, how we like to then take those smaller stories sometimes, not, you know, a lot of times people know sometimes the bigger story. If it's a firehouse, you know that it's a firehouse, right? But if we keep digging and digging and digging, there's smaller and smaller stories within that bigger story. And what we'll do with those smaller stories is we'll take those and maybe incorporate that story into the guest room. For example, when we did the firehouse, we found that during that period, the damsels of Detroit were doing the colors of the cars while the men were at war. And we used the colors that they chose. That was the years when the pastel colors were out in the cars that were coming off the line in Detroit. So we used those colors in the guest room, on the guest room headboards. And so those smaller stories become very interesting. And then we give those stories as part of the project to the marketing team as turnover. And then the marketing team tells those stories to the guests. And it just keeps perpetuating itself. And then people get to know more about the history of the building. So that's, for me, is what's so rewarding, is getting to tell that story and seeing that story survive and move on.
That's really cool. All right, let's take a look at another one of your projects. This is a really cool project you have here. What are we looking at today?
So this is a food and beverage project that we did in Dallas. This is called Monarch, and it's at the top of the Thompson Hotel in downtown Dallas. So really cool. This is an interesting little nook bar between two main dining rooms. And the client was really clever because he asked us we have a main bar here, but he said, when I'm moving guests if they have to go to the other dining room, I want them to kind of move through this smaller transitionary space. And I want them to see this little tiny jewel box bar and say, what is that? I need to, after dinner, go back there and get a drink. We're like, okay. So we blew out the ceiling in the middle, and we made this 2-story space here with a stairway that goes up to a second floor meeting rooms. And we dropped these huge we called this the conservatory bar. We dropped these huge metal flower chandeliers. These walls are a fabric of flowers, and these are upholstered walls, so it's very quiet and cozy. Just this tiny little bar, and they serve the coolest craft cocktails. And it's just this tiny, it's like 10 seats. And it creates this really cool vibe when you pass from dining room to dining room.
All right, so I love this area, the nook and stuff. You could really see how small and intimate it is. One of the things that I always think is cool with designers is you're not like using the same pieces of furniture. You're mixing shapes, styles, colors, and all of that. I would think in my untrained mind that you wouldn't be able to pull something like that off, but the eclectic nature of that connects with me in a really interesting way. How does that all work? That different styles and colors could all pair together and not create something that looks like I've been shopping at a flea market and picking up any chairs.
I have to say that Lisa's you actually need a special talent for it, and Lisa has it. I mean, really, it looks. This is her project, obviously, but it looks like it was put together, but it I mean, she spends a lot of time and she's very talented at getting things to go together that most of us would be like, no.
Well, I think it has to do with scale and shape.
I just think that it's not,
when you do it for a living, just like you do, Glenn, you just have you start to say, let's make sure that at least we have everything that has a curved back, even though these don't all match. There's something
you should just say thank you.
Thank you,
because not that many people can do that. I'm sorry. That's really very good.
Thank you, Gina.
You're welcome, Lisa. See, this is what happens. I had design hate for this one to walk by, and I'm like, damn, I could never do that.
I love it. It really works in a way that you wouldn't expect. And I've never been good at matching stuff. If they still had Garanimals for 50-year-old men, and I'd be all over that. So that makes a whole lot of sense to me. And that, of course, is a modern Italian restaurant, and it feels very modern in that sense. And I think it complements the cuisine very nicely, especially with the colors.
Yeah.
That, for some reason, greens and blues, it just says Italian food.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let's bring in the next photograph here. Gorgeous dining room.
This is a very special project. I'll let you talk about this one.
So, this is Brush Creek Ranch, and this is the farms. This is the Cheyenne Club. So we've been working on the ranch for, 14 years. So it's about, 80,000 acres, and there's all different parts of the farm or the ranch, but this is the last piece we did. So this is very much about what you just spoke of before about the involvement of the client. So our client is White Lodging, Bruce White, and Beth White. And in order to design this project, you really have to understand who they are and what they want. And they are stewards of the land. They believe in authenticity, and they believe that everything they touch on their property is they take it very seriously. So that it's giving back to the community, it's giving back, and it's built correctly, and it's stately, and it's going to last forever. So this particular piece is a farm to table concept, but it's much more. It's a brewery, a distillery, a fine dining restaurant, local wine cellar.
All in the single structure.
They're different. It looks like one structure when you're on the out looking at it, but some of this stuff happens underground. there's a creamery, there's a bakery, and then there's 3 huge greenhouses, and then there's all the cattle that supply the meat, and then there's also lambs and goats that supply. So it goes on and on and on. So this is what a true experience is. It's not about a drink or a one thing. It's about, you go to this place and it's amazing because you not only, when you're eating your meal, you're not only experiencing everything is grown on property or, I don't want to say this wrong, harvested or, I don't want to say,
we know.
Yeah, okay. So everything that's on your plate comes from where you're sitting, and the chef comes out and talks to you about it. It's very plant forward with really high intense proteins. But the whole entire experience was hard to design around because, as designers, you want to design the crap out of everything. But this one really relied on the architecture itself and really adding that level, because it is a very upscale experience. It's high. It's has a nice price tag on it, and it is a long experience. So you sit there for a while. So the idea of design was really being understated and really being true to the land and looking at like a steward of the property, like our client did.
Right, and it simultaneously feels like a barn, but doesn't feel anything like a barn at the same exact time.
Exactly.
Yeah, it looks like the building is obviously existed before, and it looks like some work was.
This is 100%. A lot of the pieces of the ranch are repurposed dude ranch houses, but this one, because of its nature, was 100% rebuilt. But it was rebuilt out of all reclaimed materials.
Yes, you could tell that wood, and it adds something to it with the reclaimed woods, right?
Yes, and that's a commitment from the client because actually we all think reclaimed materials are less expensive, but not at all. I mean, not at all. So it's a beautiful project, and we feel very lucky to be part of it.
Yeah, I could see why you felt like that. Have you gotten to eat there yet? That's what I want to know.
Have I eaten there?
Yeah.
Oh yes, I have, and it's one of my all-time favorite experiences.
Yeah, I can see why. All right, so I just want to look at the fixtures for a second, the lighting fixtures. I love, they're round, they're very reminiscent of that kind of lifestyle, but looks much more modern. In particular, is that a vent over a table in the back?
That's the hood for. There's 2 kitchens here. That kitchen is actually a learning kitchen, so there's a huge hood over it. And
yeah, it looks absolutely beautiful. Yeah. Nothing like I would see at the at the hibachi places.
No.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. Do you happen to know what material that is that's made out of? That's absolutely gorgeous. Yeah. Really terrific. All right, so we're gonna go from the woods to Washington D.C. Yours truly. This is a conversion project. So if you're converting a property, obviously you've got certain limitations, and you can't necessarily go on a spending spree. So this lobby again, Lisa, is this your work?
Yes.
Over here? I'm kind of getting the eclectic nature that you do when you have all of these different elements that, again, seemingly disparate, but somehow come together in a real unified way that just, to me, again, as the unexperienced person, just feels good. I just want to kind of hang out there.
Good.
We're taking a look at.
Good. Well, you're right. This was a conversion. This is the one I was telling you, Glenn, that opened right at the height of COVID. It remains the #1 Instagrammed hotel in DC, and it's doing great. So it was converted from a Radisson. And it's not the prettiest building on the block. It was once a hospital when it was built. It's very brutalist. It's all companies.
Well, you're saying it was a hospital. It was probably built in an era where design was irrelevant. It's
exactly.
Very in structure, right?
Exactly. So
I picture a horribly boring brick building that looks very much the same everywhere you go.
This is just formed concrete all the way up.
Right.
And
so that's a real challenge for you, Lisa.
Very much so. So we just made this a very brutalist. We stayed with that brutalist on the exterior.
Right.
We're in the heart of DuPont Circle here, And so in our research, we found that in its inception, DuPont Circle was the height of counterculture and the bohemian lifestyle.
Right. It's also where people who are gay felt comfortable and not oppressed.
That's
So
right.
it has a lot of meaning in that area to like really be yourself and express who you truly are.
Absolutely.
This design completely fits that.
Yeah.
Right.
So we kind of came up with this in a nutshell: brutalist meets boho. And this is kind of what we ran with. The entire lobby, as I was explaining before, is completely open. This is the first thing you see when you step in the front door. You walk in on a living room, not a check-in.
Right.
When you come in, the check-in is to the right, and it's in a smaller, kind of cooler, hipper little area, and they're more like pods, a place where you can just be a little bit more friendly, and there's records and record players over there and a big sofa. But this is what you walk into. It's kind of this whole living room concept. The bar is there. Everybody's kind of hanging out. The tagline is Hangout Hotel, and it's really very communal.
Interesting. I was going to ask you about the psychology behind it, but you kind of answered that already. You want people to inherently understand that this is a place to hang out and be yourself, not have a purpose of just having a transaction and then go on your way.
Exactly.
Right.
And the way we've sectioned it off and the way we've set up the seating groups, Glenn, I don't know if you can see in the left-hand corner of that picture, you can see a little bit of a sliding door up in the back there. That was walled up. We did not find those windows until we started demo. And yep. And they were, it was so dark in there, but they were 18 inches off the ground. So what we did was we created, instead of just steps to them, and they actually go out onto a rooftop that we put a whole new surface on, and we have tables out there. They do morning yoga out there. But because they're up off the ground, instead of just doing steps, we created these cool, like shifting big platforms, and we put seating groups on the platforms. They just kind of slowly meander up. And so the whole kind of living room just kind of slowly kind of lays across the entire lobby space, and you just kind of make your way up those stairs. You could sit on those stairs in living room groups, and there's a record shop right on the other side of these rails. There's a stairway that goes down, and on the other side of that there's a record shop where a DJ is always spinning, and you can buy records or you can buy equipment. I mean, it's very, very experientially and F&B it's very lively.
It sounds very, what you're saying, bohemian is the word that you keep going back to. And I get that feeling because you want people to be able to feel comfortable wherever they are, to just kind of stack out, and having different areas to do that. And also serves as a transition zone, I think is very clever and interesting indeed. So before we wrap this thing up today, when you approach a new project, obviously you've got to get the owners on board and all of that kind of stuff. What is your favorite part about the day you start a project on day one?
Wow, you ask hard questions.
Sorry, I apologize. You didn't get all my you didn't get my document of super easy questions that I planned.
I guess there's probably never an exact day one because you hear rumblings and blah, blah, blah. But I guess for me, the most exciting part is walking into the space for the first time and visualizing the opportunities, and more so than anything is walking into that space from wherever that building is located. So getting the idea of a neighborhood and then walking into the space that you're lucky enough to be able to shape and mold and hopefully help the neighborhood enjoy. So that's my favorite spot.
Lisa, what's your favorite moment of the process?
My favorite moment is the concept part, when I start researching for a project, and that moment that the stories start to appear, and then you just know when they're starting to click, and
Right,
that
yeah.
concept appears to you, and you're like, oh, sometimes it comes easy and sometimes it takes a really long time, but when that moment clicks and you're like, I have the idea and I can't wait to present this.
It
That's
never comes easy for me.
It does. Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't.
Right.
It's always a painful process. Painful process, but
right. Anything creative,
Yeah.
it could go either way. You could have that Paul McCartney moment where you wake up and yesterday's in your head and it just
How does
comes
that
out.
happen? When does that?
Right?
Yeah.
I think you might have just dated us all with that Paul McCartney one, though.
I get it. I've heard that, but that never happens.
Yeah. Apparently he does that. He did that a lot. I've been
Really?
watching.
Really?
You know that they've got in December the Get Back and over Thanksgiving weekend the Get Back documentary premiered on the Disney Plus. I think it was.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
For those who aren't watching, they took 168 hours of audio and video footage from sessions that they did in 1969 or something like that, and put out this great 6.5-hour movie. So you really get understand
that sounds really good.
how they record and stuff like that.
Did you watch it?
I've watched parts of it. I haven't watched all 6 hours yet, but it's really a fascinating approach. I hope everybody watches it because it's really cool. And for creative people, you could really see, even though it's music, how a whole process comes together, what people bring individually, and how the group itself kind of informs a project. So maybe before we wrap up, talk a little bit about how you balance what your skills are with what other things that people bring to the table to create something that's wholly unique but cohesive.
Yes. So we have a very talented group of designers here, and Gina and I, one of the good things about our group is we have, most of our senior people have been here for a long time with us, and we're really, really proud of that. Gina and I try as hard as we can, and to kind of give them autonomy and make them owners of their design.
Right, because you want them to be able to express themselves fundamentally as creative as they can be without putting up any arbitrary barriers.
Absolutely. And you know what too, Glenn? Our younger people are so talented, and we really want them to have a voice. So we also say to everybody around the table, what do you think? What do you think?
Right.
The idea could come from anybody. They're out there. They're the ones that are going out there.
And they're part of the future.
Absolutely. So, and they're going to the newest, hippest place. I'm in my pajamas at 8:30. I mean, they're...
I listen, I'm impressed that you actually got out of your
Me too.
Oh my God. Also, I think we should add that one part of a very serious part of our business is our collaboration with artists, engineers, and people outside of our office. And actually that, I think, is one of the most rewarding things we do. But that requires a lot of trust and also letting go. So you'll see in a lot of our projects, I know that there'll be these pieces that are very unique that you spoke of. But in order to have those unique pieces, you have to have a unique visionary along with them. So what we try to do is work with people, bring them in, kind of give them the general concept, and have them create something special and not try to impede too much on their process. And it ends up being like usually this, which you saw in all of our projects have it in them, but this kind of one thing that's like, wow, that's pretty amazing. And that's other people that are in our process.
And we like to bring them in very early in the process, instead of having the art or artists come in at the end and say, okay, we're done. Can you add to it? It's like, can you come in at the beginning? Here's our concept.
What do you think?
What can you add to, like, this is what we're thinking. We think we might want a piece here or something here. What can you add to this?
I really wish that people didn't think of art as the last
thing.
We do too. It really helps inform the whole individual experience of it.
Here's a secret for anyone that's listening that's a designer, that if you build the art piece into the construction budget, so that means you bring it right along with you from the time of its inception through the contractor, through the whole phase, that art piece will probably stay and you won't be it. And in addition, it will become a piece of the living space and not an additive.
Right. Therefore, it feels like it belongs
Right.
more because it was considered early.
Right.
That's right.
Plus, you don't have to worry about if it's in the budget already running out of
That's
money.
right.
It compromises at the end, which damages the entire integrity of the
Right,
product.
right.
Or you don't have to worry about it falling off the wall because it wasn't planned for.
Right.
Excellent. All right, before we go, how about each of you give some of the younger folks out there a good piece of career advice you wish you knew when you were young?
Oh my
We should have had the whole podcast.
I know, seriously. I just came up with the questions at the top of my head. I don't mean to put you on.
No, you're
this.
not. We do this all the time. It's just now that we only can say one, trying to.
I would say be fearless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Be fearless.
Yeah. I wish I had a little bit of that in my 20s.
Me too.
Yeah.
Now at my age, I don't care anymore.
I wish I opened my mouth more. Yeah.
You think people in their 20s and 30s are more apt to open their mouth more? Because we grew up in a
Yes.
shut up and listen and learn type of atmosphere.
I think they are.
They
Yeah.
absolutely are.
Yeah.
I guess that would bring me to my advice is that design is a process, and that means it's a process throughout your life. So don't be in a hurry to step up the ladder in terms of title, because really success in this industry kind of happens as you learn, and you want to learn as much as you can. And I know it's frustrating when you see your friends in different industries like just climbing this ladder super fast, but I can honestly say that and I'm speaking for myself and the other leaders in our firm, that we are where we are today because we took the time to have mentors, to be mentors, to really learn our craft, and we never stop learning. So patience will get you there. Just try to stop when you get ahead of yourself and say, okay, I'm learning, and learning, everything's a learning experience. Even the bad stuff is a learning experience. I have bad stuff and I learn from it every day.
Yeah, I mean, listen, some of our biggest mistakes and failures are where we really learn and become better professionals.
You're
That's
right.
why I try to like create a culture of fail quickly and move on to something else.
That's right.
Fail and get over it.
You're not learning unless you fail. Really.
Yeah. And that's
Right.
not easy though.
Right.
And that's hard. It's hard to teach people that failure. I never see them as failures anymore because you pass them over and you have a success. So
Yes.
That's how it kind of goes.
They're just different steps to get to success.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
I think you're right. So, Gina, Lisa, how can we learn more about Simeone Deary? Where can we find you?
You can find us at on our website at KTGY.com.
You can look it up either way. So how's that?
SimeoneDeary.com.
We also have a really great Instagram that we I think is I just said Instagram, but it does have finished jobs. It has all kinds of stuff, and we're hiring.
Big
Please
time.
call us if you need a job. We are hiring all levels.
Beautiful. All right.
Come on,
beautiful.
Glenn.
Go on, you want a job, Glenn? Because
You want to zero design experience? All right, ladies, thank you so much for being here. And thanks to everybody for watching the Hotel Design Podcast, brought to you by our good friends over at Porcelanosa. I hope you learned as much as I did today. And I think what I'm going to really take away from this is how to create something that feels organic. You need to really trust in the space, trust in yourself, trust in your team in order to push each other to be the best that you can be. All right, so first, the folks at Simeone Deary and myself, Glenn Haussman, thanks for watching this episode of the Hotel Design Podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for the honor of being on the show.
Yeah, thank you guys. Really appreciate it. All right, see everyone later. Bye.